The first tenant of the LEAP district in Lebanon is moving in. Eli Lilly is starting to build its state-of-the-art medicine foundry facility.
Eli Lilly and the city of Lebanon making headlines, linking up to create growth, jobs, and innovation in Boone County.
What we want to do is we want to get ingrained in the community. We want to give back. We're creating jobs, and we're also here to make the community better long term.
The LEAP district's impact on Lebanon and Boone County, 1,300 jobs on the horizon. Lilly's $13 billion investment. Lebanon Mayor Matt Gentry with insight on the deal and why it's not the only thing fueling economic flames in his city. He's my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by the three-term mayor in the city of Lebanon, Boone County, just a bit northwest of Indianapolis, Matt Gentry. And Mayor Gentry, really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Always. Thanks for having me, Gary.
Certainly a lot. Is it hard for you to believe? It kind of is for me, because I remember when you were elected, and at that time, I think it was November of 2015, you were the second youngest mayor in the state, 26 years old. So you're coming up on 10 years in office. Does it seem like it's been that long?
Some days, yes. Some days, no. Some days I feel like we're just getting started, and other days they're long. So, it is really exciting to look back at everything we've accomplished. There's been, certainly when I first ran in 2015, I felt like there was so much potential here, and just someone needed to try to steer the ship in that direction. And I think, frankly, we've had more success than I probably even envisioned when I first ran. So I'm thrilled with where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, and as I recall, when you that first campaign, you ran basically a campaign of change. You thought it was time for Lebanon to get perhaps more aggressive when it comes to economic development and jobs and downtown development and those kinds of things. That certainly on all fronts has happened in your tenure as mayor in Lebanon. Talk about the growth. We'll get into the LEAP district and Eli Lilly and Company's major investment in a minute. But talk about broadly what is happening in Lebanon and why it's happening.
Yeah, sure. So when I first ran, we were like a lot of other more like kind of exurban, somewhat rural communities. Our downtown had seen a lot better days, and things had kind of, I'll say stagnant, but fairly stagnant, not a lot of change. And so being a younger person, millennial, right, I was looking forward of, what will this community need to be a place where my kids will want to, come back to one day once they've grown up. Now, at that point, I was very hypothetical. I wasn't married, didn't have any kids, right? So I was trying to, really think down the road. And we started downtown, and for me, that was the big piece because, especially in county seat communities, right, the downtown is really the heart of your community. And like I said, our last major investment had happened down there before I was born. It was showing its age, and frankly, it just wasn't as relevant to what people wanted today. So, we had a big swing, certainly focused on the downtown. Did about a $10 million investment down there, which I thought at the time was just an insane number to do. It was our largest project we've ever done in Lebanon. It's not the case anymore, but investing in that place first. And then I think because of that initial investment that we had in our downtown, we've just seen all these ripples. Lebanon was, we obviously have a prime location on I-65, 25 minutes from downtown Indianapolis, airport, all those things. It just needed a little bit of a spark. And I think, starting with the downtown, gave that spark, that attracted some home builders. As we know, a lot of economic development follows talent, right? And so that came along as well. We changed some of our strategies and how we were strategic with what types of companies we were going after from an attraction standpoint. And really that just kind of started the flywheel going for us. And, obviously the state made a pretty big investment up here as well. And, but that kind of piggybacked on what we kind of were already doing. So that really kicked into hyperdrive. But for a long time, people always said, hey, Lebanon, we're next. We're going to grow. But all of our policies were kind of anti-growth. There really wasn't a vision to how do we grow the right way. There really wasn't that strategic plan. So I think having the right team here kind of started that, and obviously the downtown was the beginning of that.
How tough was it to sell this idea of growth? Because people, generally speaking, can be resistant to change. What did it take to sell this idea of change?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say the idea is totally sold either, right? I mean, every discussion we have, people will bring up growth, and they're concerned about the impact on traffic and concerned about the impact on other things, right? But it's an interesting situation where people can hold two very different and frankly juxtaposed ideas of, well, I want more restaurants and more shopping, right? But we don't want any more people. And I really had to try to explain to people, you can't have both, right? So if you want those things, um, we have to make some investments and we have to grow. But and I've always said we want to grow the right way, right? We want to grow in a sustainable, managed way. We want to grow in a way that keeps our community feel right. We don't just want to kind of throw up thousands of acres of subdivisions overnight, right? We want to keep what makes Lebanon special and build on that, frankly, and also invest in ways that connect communities, right? And make sure our neighborhoods stay connected. So with the trails and the sidewalks and those things as well too, and that allows us to invest in the parks and build the quality of place. So growth is certainly a factor, right? But I think if it's presented in the greater context of all the good things that come with it, if it can be managed properly, which is not always an easy thing to do, there are a lot more benefits than downsides to growth.
Certainly, a lot of attention has been placed on I guess you'd call it a mega investment, really, in the LEAP Innovation District there in Lebanon and Boone County. And the major tenant, Eli Lilly and Company, massive plans there to invest like more than $13 billion in the development there. Transformational is a word that's, I think, often overused, but I think in this case, it's probably accurate. Talk about the LEAP district, really how, for folks who maybe have heard about it but aren't really familiar, how it all came about.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, it's interesting when the state came up with the idea, and then when we knew about it, were different timelines. But I think based on what I've heard in my discussions with the IEDC, this kind of came as an idea after the state kind of lost out on the Intel deal to Ohio. And I think there was a recognition at the state level that, hey, we don't have any kind of mega site type program here in Indiana. Now, other states do, Texas, North Carolina, Ohio, obviously. How do we now compete, right? Because they were seeing a lot from that standpoint. A lot of those companies, the speed to business was the biggest incentive you could offer them. And so they kind of went about their work, got contracts on land. A lot of rumors started flying around of what's happening because no one's talking about it. They finally briefed me on March 1st of 2022 of, hey, here's the vision, here's the plan. Immediately I'm like, hey, that all sounds great, but we have this whole water situation we're gonna have to deal with. And like, hey, we'll solve that. So I really saw it, frankly, as an opportunity, one, to have that kind of transformational, um, as you said, bringing in a high quality employers that will provide opportunity for my kids and grandkids going forward, but then also solving a really kind of huge problem that we've had for a long time of solving the water issue and having a partner at the state level, us in the same boat together, would be hugely beneficial for our community. So that was something I kind of leapt at, and certainly a big swing there. And it's still starting to crawl. I wouldn't say we're fully walking yet, but I think we're starting to see all of the pieces starting to line up, and it's going to get really exciting, I think, in the next couple of years here.
Yeah, talk about the water situation. That got a lot of attention. Is that water situation solved?
Yeah, so we have signed agreements and funding all approved. So Citizens Energy Group will be providing 2 additional million gallons of water a day to the city by January 1, 2027, and then an additional 8 by January 1, 2028. So that's 10 million additional gallons of water a day coming into Lebanon. And for perspective, our entire system today is about 4.6. So we're more than doubling our entire system of water bringing to Lebanon. And frankly, this puts us on a plan to be 50 or 100-year water secure here in Lebanon, which is frankly something that my predecessor has been struggling with for a long, long time.
Well, you mentioned you're kind of at that stage, crawling, not quite walking yet, but getting close. Give us an idea, because this Lilly investment obviously is huge for the company, and a major commitment in Indiana and in particular Lebanon. Look at 3, 4, 5 years as this really gets up and operating. What's it going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, so if you drive by on I-65 going north to Lafayette, you look out your right side, you'll see it. But really, that doesn't even give you a sense of the scale, right? Once you actually go see it on the ground in person, you really see what $13 billion looks like. And it's impressive, right? I mean, if you look at the renderings for it, the buildings are well designed. They look very nice. It is still a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility, but it's well designed. There'll be research as well, and the clinical trials work on the medicine foundry site, which will be along State Road 32. So it's really gonna be, I think, frankly, be built into this hub of innovation, and that's been the vision for it. And frankly, having a tenant like Eli Lilly proves the concept. I've always said, even if it's just Eli Lilly, this leap would have been a win. But I don't think we'll just be Eli Lilly. I think we'll have other companies come in too, because they're going to want their suppliers. They're going to want people that work in similar industries to have this kind of innovation environment. And I think you see what's happened in the Research Triangle Park down in North Carolina. I think that's a very similar model that the Leap is looking at, and how we're following that. But we're also learning from some of their mistakes too. I mean, I think we saw that a big mistake they made in RTP was that they didn't have housing and walkability and those things incorporated into the overall plan. So it kind of overwhelmed all the other communities around it. So, a mixed use village is kind of part of the concept here in the Leap District, which makes it a little different as well too. So, I do think it is frankly, it's huge, of course, for Lebanon, but I think frankly it's going to be huge for all of Central Indiana, and I think it's going to be huge for the entire state of Indiana one of these days. So, it's certainly, there's been a lot of ink spilled about Leap, and people for and against it. They've got their opinions. That's fine. But I think when you look back on this 20 years from now, I think people are going to see this was a great decision, and frankly took some pretty firm backbones to make the right call, because in the long run, a lot of people are going to benefit from it.
You talk about housing. I think you go to almost any community in Indiana, housing is a huge issue. I know that's certainly been the case in Lebanon. Now with this massive investment, how are you dealing with housing and affordable housing and workforce housing, all the types of things you need?
Yeah, so we're taking the approach of I've always wanted Lebanon to be a community for people of all walks of life. My friends over in Hampton County, they've kind of had their model, but you also see them struggle with more of the attainable workforce side. We're trying to keep a balance of it, right? So we're trying to have homes that are available for the executives right down in the Waterford golf course development that Steve Hinkie is working on. We're going to try to have more downtown mixed use products as well too, so apartments. We're exploring things like narrow lot homes and cottages for kind of those, either uh, single parent families or empty nesters, right? So really, again, we're kind of a all the above approach, frankly, is what we're trying to take, and finding the right pieces, the right developments, so they all kind of layer together in the community as well. So we're not trying to be like it's got to be 100% masonry or have all those requirements. Got to be two-car garage. We're trying to be flexible and work with the developers to frankly see gaps in the market, and then work with them to figure out what makes the most sense, and where in the community that makes the most
Are
sense.
are you seeing interest from developers, from home builders to put product in there?
We are. We have over about 1,000 approved homes right now. So we have quite the pipeline ready to come. We were obviously, with the whole water situation, we kind of paused development for a little while just to make sure obviously the number one thing when we have utilities, make sure that no one is underserved, and they turn the faucet on, the water doesn't come out. That'd be a huge problem. So we want to make sure we were correct in how we were servicing, how much we could service, and frankly just kind of squeeze out the last few bit of water for these homes, but then also could know that the water's coming by 2027. So we can kind of, by the time the homes are built, the water's here kind of as well too. So we're phasing these things and trying to manage that.
Yeah, I want to ask you one more question on LEAP, and you mentioned the potential for other tenants. I know there was certainly at least talk or a tentative agreement. I'm not sure which for Meta, for a big a data center that would theoretically go there. Where does that stand? Is that something that you anticipate will happen?
Yeah, well, they own the land. So if you look it up today, it's not owned by the IADC anymore. It's owned by an LLC company, and that's owned by Meta. So we plan to see their development plan submitted later this month. So it should be fairly soon here, and it'll be coming up on a planning commission to review that. So I wouldn't actually be surprised to see moving dirt here later this year.
Certainly, a part of economic development is kind of being on the radar screen, if you will, of the site selection consultants and companies and all those people who do deals. What has Leap and in particular the Lilly investment done? Did the phone start ringing there in Lebanon once news got out?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of interest, certainly. And Leap kind of came at a good time for us too, because we were actually kind of, obviously we had our Lebanon Business Park that started back in the mid '90s. It was almost fully built out, right? So we were kind of in this process of, okay, what's a phase two of that, or what does this look like going forward? And the initial starting partner kind of wasn't involved anymore. So, and then the state kind of came in and said, hey, here's what we're doing. So we kind of were able to pivot and certainly and have that partnership with the state going. The challenge, frankly, we're going to have now, though, is that we know there's enough construction workers to do all these projects at once, too, right? So that's a limiting factor in all this stuff, too. So, I think there's 3,500 construction workers at LEAP or on the LP1 peak, and then they'll kind of roll down the matrix and all that. And so it's gonna be, the Medicine Foundry, that was the project name. So it's gonna be a busy time, certainly from a construction standpoint, but, I know the IDC is getting leads a lot, and of course, there's been some changes to IDC recently too to, what's the vision and make sure that that aligns with the current administration of what they wanna see there, and, there's a lot of people kinda learning on the job, so to speak, of kind of some of the history and the bigger vision, and there's a lot to take in certainly, of a project of this complexity, but I think we're gonna have, it's gonna be a lot more momentum, and it's not slowing down, and I think frankly, though, having Eli Lilly kind of put their stamp of approval on something, I think it says a huge amount, and so I think, if Eli Lilly says yes, I think it's gonna be hard for a company to say, "Well, if it's good enough for Eli Lilly, why is it not good enough for us?" And so I think that's been really helpful as well.
You mentioned the changes at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Certainly, the Braun administration has, I think, a different view of economic development or implementing changes. I know a whole new board there at the IEDC. Do you anticipate any impact or fallout or change for what we're seeing in Lebanon?
I wouldn't say it's really much of a change. I mean, really, I never interfaced with the previous IEDC board, so I don't really think that was something that will change much at all. Certainly, obviously, knowing the governor's background of being from a small town, I think he certainly values Main Street economic development and all of that, which I agree with as well. We try to do that Main Street economic development here in Lebanon as well too. But I'm just a believer, and you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think it can be a dual prong approach. Certainly, with LEAP's the only innovation district in the state, then I guess go bully for Lebanon, I guess, right? But I certainly think there's a lot of demand. Obviously, certainly Indiana's tax climate is very attractive to a lot of companies. But I think where we struggle with and where site selectors will tell you we get dinged on is the quality of life, is the workforce, are those things. And you need strong communities to back that up, right? And so I don't think it's an either or, it needs to be an and both. And I think they have to work together, and it's a balancing act. And that's the job of local leaders, is try to manage that mix of those projects. And frankly, that's kind of why we changed our strategy, right? Of how we attracted companies. We tailor our incentives differently based on what the companies are and what the wages are, because we want, the capital investment's great, but as we've seen the changes in the SEA1, the business person property tax can now be depreciated down to zero, right? So that changes some of the math too on how we evaluate these projects and how they're going to be in our communities long term. So a lot of factors go into it, but obviously having a great team and a great supportive city council is really helpful here for Lebanon.
Much more ahead with Lebanon Mayor Matt Gentry, Lebanon's LEAP district, and Eli Lilly and Company. Not the only investment going on in Lebanon and Boone County. And we'll also talk maybe what's next for the three-term mayor in the city of Lebanon when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
We build Indiana. The Laborers International Union of North America are men and women building roads and bridges to get Hoosiers where they're going today and a new energy infrastructure that will keep Indiana competitive tomorrow. LIUNA's over 12,000 statewide members also grow local economies, earning good union wages, shopping where they live and work, and paying taxes. We build Indiana for good jobs and stronger communities. The Laborers International Union of North America. We are LIUNA.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Lebanon Mayor Matt Gentry, a very busy guy in a fast-growing community and changing community, Lebanon in Boone County. And Mayor, we talked a bit about Lilly and the LEAP district. Certainly that's getting a lot of the headlines. But there are other headline-making deals going on in Lebanon. I know recently we reported on Caterpillar with a $60 million investment, hundreds of jobs. So there's other investment going on. How do you keep up with it?
I have a great team. That's really what it comes down to is we have just a phenomenal team here, both at the city and at the Boone Economic Development Corporation as well, working these deals, working through these projects. Economic development's an interesting thing, right? You put some bait out and see who nibbles, and sometimes they bite quick and sometimes they don't, and sometimes it's a 2-year negotiations and sometimes it's 4 months, so it's all, every deal's different. Every project is different, but really just having a good team is kind of what makes it all work.
I'm sure you have people who will say, "Hey, Lebanon's growing too fast, put on the brakes." How do you answer those folks?
Yeah, I hear that all the time. Certainly I would say that you look at other communities that have grown. When you look at it from a pure population standpoint, Lebanon back in 2010, we were about 15,000 people, about 15,500. Now we're at 17,000 people, right? So really adding 20 years, adding 1,000 people isn't really actually that much growth. Certainly as it goes forward, that's going to be kind of whoever's run the city at that point's job to manage that and how you kind of balance that. But I think we've taken a very balanced, sustainable growth model here, and we're very strategic with what types of what densities we want to see, what types of projects we want to see. We're not a yes to everything or a no to everything either. I think you got to find that balance. I think you can fall off the road in the ditches both ways, and so I think a managed, sustainable path is the way you want for a healthy community. So certainly for people that remember Lebanon, 30, 40 years ago where there was not much happening. Actually, our population started to dip a little bit in the 90s, which, population decline, that really honestly is the worst thing for a city to happen, because that's a really hard spiral to get out of once you start having population decline.
As you look at the need to coordinate what you're doing in Lebanon with other communities in that area, because it's not just Lebanon. I mean, you look at Whitestown and Zionsville and that whole area there, even outside of Boone County, a lot of growth. How important is that cooperation, really doing things as a region?
Yeah, I think it's progressed a lot, and frankly, even the 10 years I've been mayor, I've seen it really transform. Both certainly here in Boone County, I think for a while, unfortunately, Boone County was the poster child of people not working together. But I think we've turned that around. I think we have a lot of good partnerships, and we've had projects I think that people have all been able to work on and collaborate together with, like the Big Four Trail, which is like the Boone County's version of the Monon Trail. So we've had these projects that have put us all in the same rooms. We've been working together. I think people see the changes here. The growth is here. It's not about stopping it anymore. It's more about managing it. And I think that some of the newer leaders in place, I think there's better cooperation there. But certainly it's going to be, Boone County. I think we're about 70,000 people now today. By 2050, we may be over 150, right? So it could be, doubling the population, and that's going to take, frankly, some recognition from the leadership to make sure that we're all on the same page, working together, doing the bigger kind of projects and plans, and making sure that when it's here, we're managing it and it's done in a sustainable way.
As you look at Boone County, or you look at Lebanon in particular, Lebanon's geographic location, kind of between Indianapolis, Indianapolis International Airport, the new IU and Purdue campus in West Lafayette. Mung Chiang, Purdue's president, has talked a lot about a so-called hard tech corridor that stretches
Yep.
from downtown Indianapolis, really up 65 to West Lafayette. How does Lebanon factor into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the vision is that Lebanon is kind of the heart of it, right? If we call Purdue the brain, right? And then you've got 16 Tech and the innovation, and those people trying to run fast and do cool things out of 16 Tech. Purdue's Lebanon will be kind of come to the place where some of those ideas that happen at Purdue that maybe get tested at 16 Tech and they get implemented in Leap, right? So it's kind of that cohesive ecosystem. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of talent along that pipeline. Lebanon's fairly unique, right? We kind of straddle both the Indy and the Lafayette markets. We have a 765 area code because a previous mayor didn't want to be part of Indy, so we have a 765 area code. But yeah, to your point, I can be downtown Indianapolis in 25 minutes, and I can be at a Purdue basketball game in 45 minutes, right? So it is a unique location, and we're leveraging that and trying to leverage it for more than just logistics, right? That's kind of where it started. But we can leverage our location for innovation and technology and research as well.
Yeah, what does that look like from an education standpoint? And again, every city in the country is trying to get that educated workforce, especially in areas like science, technology, engineering, and math, and some of those areas. You mentioned Lebanon's reputation, and rightfully so, as a real distribution and logistics hub. That certainly continues to be the case. But now with this Lilly investment and some of the other things that Purdue is doing, that's changing and diversifying a bit.
Yeah, and I think it's about providing a level of quality of life and amenities that people want to see. And so, we touched earlier too on having the housing available and having housing available at all price points too, right? You want to make sure you have housing available for those, recent Purdue grads to buy a house in Lebanon and work in Leap, right? And so, but you also want hopefully the CEO of the research company living in town too, right? And so it's parks, it's trails, playgrounds, it's childcare. Surprisingly, is becoming more and more of a focus of topic of a lot of conversation of make sure we have proper childcare for the workforce. So it's all these different things that all kind of create one bigger picture to just provide a great place to live. And I'm a big believer in having a good mix is usually the best situation versus being, betting everything on red, you know what I mean, or something like that.
You're in your third term as mayor, been in office now for about a decade. Got to ask you, what's your favorite part about being mayor?
My favorite part usually is talking to about second or third graders because they think I'm way cooler and way more important than I actually am. They're like, "Have you called the president recently?" It's kind of those questions. That's always fun. But frankly, it is working every day to make the place where I live and where my kids are growing up a better place. Whether it's building a new trail, sidewalk, park amenity, those are things I know will live long past me, and I think that being able to impact and touch and do things like that makes your community a better place to live. So, I plan to live in Lebanon for the rest of my life too. So I'll be living here as well. So, I want to benefit from these things in the future as well. So I do think that's what's really unique about being a mayor versus other elected office is that you really impact the place you live on a day-to-day basis to a far greater extent than you would in the legislature or just Congress or pick your elected official. So being a mayor is a pretty unique and great job to have.
Yeah,
Hard sometimes, but great job.
Well, I was going to ask you, what on the flip side, what's maybe the most challenging thing, or what keeps you up at night?
Usually my 2-year-old keeps me up at night. No, I sleep pretty well. Like I said, I've got a great team here, but the public safety stuff too, that's always, that can go bad so quickly. So having really, well-trained professional people in public safety, that's the biggest thing. And frankly, that's what city's got to get right no matter what. But that's the biggest thing I would say the challenge is, but, I would say the thing I like least in my job though is dealing when it's, neighbor disputes, right? That's a thing. It's mayor's unique because you go everything from negotiating a, multi-billion-dollar economic development deal to someone mad at their neighbor because they have chickens, right? Or fireworks going off or whatever, right? So it's the whole gambit there, which is, fun and challenging. But I would say it's when people try to drag the city into like picking a side between neighbors, it gets pretty messy pretty quickly. So I just try to say here's the rules. Let's apply it fairly. Everybody's treated the same. That's usually the best approach to it. But usually it doesn't make either side happy because they want you to side with them.
So as you mentioned, you grew up in Boone County, right?
Originally from Cincinnati area, actually.
Oh, okay.
And then
When did you move to Indiana?
I moved my 7th grade year. So my mom went from Procter & Gamble to Niagara Sciences, now Corteva. And we landed in Boone County. And then summer before my senior year of high school, we bought a farm west of Lebanon. So I actually graduated from Zionsville. But my brother went to Western Boone High School and all that stuff too. So, and then after graduating from Purdue, bought a house in Lebanon and been here ever since.
Was community service, public service, elected office, was that something that you've always kind of wanted to do, or how did that develop?
So my dad has been involved in politics for a long time, but I always thought I'd be the guy behind the camera. I always, I was a political consultant, worked at the state house, did things like that. So certainly around public policy and government, I was a poli-sci econ at Purdue. That was always something I was passionate about and cared about. But I never really thought I'd be the guy in the seat, so to speak. I was looking for someone else to run for mayor of Lebanon back in 2015, and was like, "Hey, we need to do better. We can do things. We need to think about the future." And then no one else is willing to do it. And I said, "Well, if I think these things, why would I not do it too?" Right. So I kind of put my name out there and knocked on a lot of doors, and they gave a 25-year-old and that turned 26 a chance to do it. And I think we've done okay.
Well, and you have announced, as you look going forward, that this 3rd term in office will be your last, right?
That's my plan. Like I said, the mayor is a tough job, but there's more good days than bad days. But it's a hard job, and frankly, in this day and age of social media, it's if you're doing it right, it's a tiring job. Mm-hmm. And so I do believe in having new people come in with their ideas and their vision and making their mark on the community, frankly. So certainly I respect the mayors that do it for a long, long time. Mayor Brainerd or Mayor Rosworski up in Lafayette, those guys have been did it for a long, long time. And I respect that, but that's really not me. I like to have things I want to accomplish, push towards those, and then let somebody else kind of take the reins. And frankly, I was kind of torn on whether going for a 3rd or not, but obviously with the COVID situation where LEAP was, it just didn't feel right to kind of, jump ship in the middle of a term.
So what are you thinking about next? I know people probably ask that all the time, but what's next for Mayor Gentry?
I really am focused on running out my term. I'm mayor till December 31st, 2027. So I'm going to run through the tape. That's my plan. Hopefully, frankly, hand off a lot of good projects that are ready for the next mayor to come in too. But I've been doing this since I was 26, right? So at some point obviously I've learned a lot of skills and I probably have a lot of opportunities available to me, but that's not really something I'm worried about today. I'm trying to run through the tape of being mayor.
A lot of running, a lot of activity in Lebanon and Boone County, no question about that. Mayor Matt Gentry, really appreciate the time you've taken to join us on the podcast. Congratulations on the success that you're continuing to have there in Lebanon, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Gary. Have me back anytime. Appreciate it.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We're a weekly conversation with the achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes, more than 200, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com, where you can also find Indiana Business News 24/7. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Gary Dick. We'll see you next time.